And we welcome you back into the Rowdy Studios. Bassmasters sitting alongside Buzz Cutler talking about Chicagoland. The Geico 400 finally got it in on a Monday. Tony Stewart, for the second year in a row in the first race in the chase, decides to risk it on fuel. Only this time it pays off. He wins the race. What do you think about that?
So this time, Darren Grubb is a genius.
Last year,
genius.
He was an idiot. Although he did say, following the race, that he did have last year in the back of his mind, but Tony was pretty confident he'd saved Darien enough gas to make it to the end, and he did.
You hate to have to play the fuel mileage game, but that's just the way the caution came out, and we came in and got fuel, and he's Darien told me we had to save a lap's worth of fuel, so we had a whole run to do it.
Was that a good call to go for it? Obviously, in hindsight, it was.
In hindsight, how can you question it? But in the chase, this point system is so punitive. I think taking those sorts of risks, is pretty dicey. Just ask Kyle Busch or Jeff Gordon if they thought it was a good call. But here's the thing I like about Tony Stewart. Where are they headed next week? Loudon. Where did Tony Stewart and Ryan Newman finish at Loudon earlier in the season?
1-2.
1-2. Smoke might have waited a while to get his first win of the season, but he may have timed it perfectly.
Well, the other thing is, you got to look at a couple things here. Think about how bad Tony was at Bristol, how out to lunch that whole team was at Bristol, and really Michigan too. I mean, they just weren't good. And so they've come a long way. I personally thought Darien Grubb had to be in trouble at some point.
Well,
as bad
I think
as
I
those cars
tweeted
were.
at some point, or maybe I wrote this in the power poll, that he was on the hot seat.
But here's the other thing I want to ask you about the fuel mileage. When it's clear that the majority of guys are going to go for it, you kind of have to go for it too, right? Because
or you
if
zig
you're
when
close,
everybody else zags.
Yeah, but if you come in and pit and a bunch of guys are going for it, a certain percentage are going to make it. You're going to finish a lap down. You're going to finish. I mean, it's going to be rough for you anyway if you're that close to it. So I think in this situation, unless you knew you were going to run out, you kind of needed to go for it.
Yeah.
And it was just too bad for guys like Matt Kenseth, too bad for guys like Jeff Gordon, too bad for those guys that did run out of fuel, that they just didn't have the mileage that some other guys had, and some guys are now in a big hole.
Yeah, and Matt Kenseth is now 24 points behind the leader. Jeff Gordon, 25 points. Kyle Busch, 19 points. Jimmy Johnson, 16 points, all behind the leader because they ran out of fuel. And, Denny Hamlin, of course, is off the charts. He's 41 points back.
All right, that's our first look at the Geico 400 from Chicagoland. We'll be back in just a sec with a look at a couple other drivers for Buzz Cutler. I'm Bassmasters. We'll see you next time.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.